Designed by Robert Riddles and introduced in 1951, the 75 standards were designed for mixed traffic use on secondary routes where the standard 5s or black 5s would be too heavy. In simpler terms, the class themselves were a tender version of the 80,000 standard tanks, with the same diameter driving wheels at 5 foot 8 inches, though using a slightly different boiler. The leading bogie, however, was taken from the standard Class 5 design. Designed in Brighton and constructed at Swindon, the class were built to ensure they could work over as much of a network as possible, being classified as Class 4 mixed traffic. After this, they were allocated all around the network, with 45 going to the London Midland region, 20 to the Western region, with the last 15 being allocated to the Southern region. Nearly all of the class ran with the standard BR2 or BR2A tenders, which held 3,500 gallons of water and 6 tons of coal, giving them a good route availability. The locomotives allocated to the Southern region, however, ran with larger BR1B tenders carrying 4,725 gallons of water and 7 tons of coal. This did enable the locomotives to travel further without the need to stop and replenish coal and water, but did have the adverse effect of reducing their route availability to the same as a standard 5. The reasoning behind the larger tenders being that the Southern region was not equipped with water troughs, and therefore a higher water capacity was desirable. Built in January 1956, 75079 was numerically the last of the class. However, some of the Swindon batch, 75050 to 064, were not completed until June 1957. 75079 was constructed at Swindon in the batch 75065 to 79 and was earmarked for the Southern region, initially allocated at Exmouth Junction for its first 6 months in service. Interestingly, there was a final batch of 10 of the type planned for allocation to the Eastern region, but the order was cancelled. 75079 was then allocated to Basingstoke, where it primarily operated local stopping services between Waterloo and Southampton, including a lot of work on ballast trains. While based at Basingstoke, it was fitted with a double chimney, along with a number of the class to improve performance. In March 1963, the Loco was reallocated to Eastleigh, where it stayed until being withdrawn just a few years later, in November 1966. After periods in store out of service at both Eastleigh and Guildford sheds, the Loco was dispatched to Wooden Brothers scrapyard in Barry. 75079 remained at Barry until 1982, when it was purchased with the help of Plymouth City Council, and restoration started at the Plym Valley Railway. In 2007, the Loco was purchased by the Mid-Hants Railway Preservation Society, with the aim of restoring the locomotive back to working order. Fast forward to the present day and the restoration has kicked up into another level. Next to me here is the tender chassis. Currently it's stripped down to its bare components and they're doing most of the aligning works, working on the structure, and then they'll start working up and adding more on. The cab itself is looking spectacular. Fabricated, painted, and looking like it's ready to mount already. Now of course, we need a boiler first, so let's go and see how the boiler's getting on.
Welcome back to the boiler shop. Here I am with the boiler, which is for 75079. As you can see, most of the work has been concentrated on the firebox, with some external steel plate work removed, all the stays removed. The next stage on this is to do some repair work on the laps on the door plate and tube plate on the copper inner box. So we'd started making some templates for that. So we need to cut some material out, cut some new inserts, and then that will be sort of copper welded in place. Once that's been done, we can start thinking about fettling and trimming to fit steel plate work for the outer wrapper, and that will be, the job progressing along quite well.
Interestingly, the locomotive actually spent more time in the scrapyard than it did in service with BR. A dreadful shame, many could argue. Now, Granted, I did start this segment saying how the overhaul really had kicked into another gear, which it has. The boiler's off and in the boiler shop, and a lot more work is happening with this locomotive, but I really cannot go any further without stressing and thanking the fantastic work that the dedicated team of volunteers here at Rockley have been undertaking for the last few years, even before the boiler came off. It's really easy to think when a boiler gets back onto its chassis and the wheels are inserted, then it's pretty much ready to go, but it really isn't that case. That's only about 10%, if anything, of the work that really needs to be done. There's a lot of plumbing and wiring together, oil pipes that need to be fabricated, parts that need to be sourced, stuff which has been done now, which really does mean the boiler can be put on and everything is just plumbed back together because all of that work has been undertaken. And hopefully we can look back on this maybe in a few years' time if this video reappears and just look at how far we've come and how much progress has been made. Because while it doesn't look like an engine yet, soon it will be. And it really is going to be at home here. A Southern engine working on Southern rails once again, here at the Watercress line.